Hi, this is Trisha from Tribe to Village. This is our tribe, our village, our family. Thank you for joining me today. And today I have the honor of being joined by Mrs. Courtney Wong Chin. Hi, Courtney.
Hi.
Courtney is currently the Director of Learning Insights and Design at Nickelodeon. And she was previously the Director of Research at Sesame Street. So Courtney is a big deal.
Thank you. Thank you for that intro.
And then also something else that we don't need any introduction is Courtney and myself. We are members of communities that have been, how do I say this, oppressed. And Courtney, I just want to ask you, how have you been coping, or how do you feel given the current rise in Asian hate?
Yeah, it's been quite a year, huh? I mean, from the spike in anti-Asian violence after COVID, being blamed for COVID, through to the Atlanta shootings. The Atlanta shootings really sort of put everything over the edge for me. I mean, growing up in New York City, I'm used to being in diverse neighborhoods where I'm used to being in places where people are used to seeing and working with people who look different, sound different, everything. So to suddenly have like such a strong fear of going out during the daytime because of what we were seeing on the news. And I think especially just like visuals of just seeing, especially the old folks, like old Asian people who look like me, who look like my grandparents, being beaten. It's those visuals were so strong and it does something really different to you. I think in a way that gave me more empathy for my Black and brown brothers and sisters, who I'm like, wow, that's what they're seeing. They're seeing on the news, in media, portrayed all the time, every single day, that it's just so different to see a face and a body that looks like yours, being beaten and mutilated in front of you. So it was hard. It definitely made me wrestle with a lot of questions of the labels that have been put on Asians, and particularly Asian women, after the shootings in Atlanta, and to say like, wow, we're like the model minority, but also erased from some places in American history, but also fetishized and blamed for the sins of other people, like the Atlanta shooter, who was, given a pass of how hard a day he was having
a bad day,
right?
Having a bad day is an excuse for murder.
Right.
Wow. I could totally empathize with you. Live it every day, and that is just a recurring trauma. It's a trauma that you could never heal from, because it keeps going on and on. And there's a time where the hashtags, they may stop trending, but the threat is still there. This is something that, especially as a Black woman, I know you mentioned that you were afraid to go outside. So I know what that feels like. I'm afraid for myself, but not only for myself, for my sons, for my husband, for my cousins, for my family members, my friends. It's just something that is hard to heal from. And then you start questioning a lot of things, and you're like, wait, so does my life not matter? Am I not worthy enough? So there's like all of these things that just weighs on you.
And it's exhausting.
Yes, it's very exhausting. It's exhausting and traumatizing. And it's like you have to make a conscious decision every day to keep going, every day, to try to fight for a better future. But it weighs a lot on you.
Yeah.
It weighs a lot. And I think about my children often, these things. My boys are young, but I also have nieces and nephews and friends with children and cousins, children. And I'm thinking, if it's so hard for us as adults to process what's going on, I can't even imagine what type of information the children are receiving.
Yeah. I mean, kids, especially now, have access to so much information and media that isn't gate kept by you or any other adult, right? They're like between TV, social media, anything else on the internet, YouTube, like there's so much information they're getting, there's so much they're seeing, that it comes more to the forefront to them than we might expect.
And so, Courtney, as someone who works with, content geared towards children, do you think it's appropriate to talk to young children about race relations and racism, or should we wait?
No, I mean, no, you should not wait. You could see I was nodding before you even finished the question. I think it's 100% appropriate to talk to children about race and racism, because I mean, racism is embedded in our society, in our systems, in our relationships, in our media, and and children are witnessing and participating in it, whether they realize it or not. So especially with things like even just taking race and like talking about like our identities, what makes us special, what makes us us. There's so much to learn about celebrating ourselves, and having a firm sense of who we are and the value that's in our identity, but also that like they're especially younger children, so starting in preschool, they're learning to identify differences, right? And what's the same, what's different. They're learning to sort and categorize by that. But how grown-ups can really help is just steering them in the value that they give to those differences, right? So you can see the differences and you can choose to celebrate them and say, this is great, and I want to be friends with someone who looks different from me. I want to play with someone who sounds different from me.
And I want to embrace my difference. I want to embrace how I am.
Exactly. And I want to celebrate, the things about me or the things about me and my family that might be unique, right? So there's so much there that parents can guide children to have, to assign a great value to those differences. So and really just starting early and helping children to celebrate diversity and to recognize when things are happening that are unfair. I mean, kids are really good detectives at pointing out what's unfair, right?
What's
unfair, right? Like, oh no, she got that, or you're being nice to her, you're not being nice to me, right? Like they're
very receptive to that. I know, every single day.
So like connecting all those dots with like kindness and fairness and really loving people, like they're pretty primed to learn about justice and injustice, and to learn how to stand up when they see something unfair and unkind and unloving, which is racism.
Yeah, but what would you say to those parents who are like, talking about racism so early is taking away the innocence from a child, or it's traumatizing a child?
Yeah. I would say, I just completed last month a study that I had finished at Sesame workshop called Coming Together, Family Reflections on Racism. The results from that study were released. And we had found that for children, we worked with children at ages 6 to 11, that even as young as 6, these things are already on their minds. Things like racism, things like people not being treated fairly, things like, and specifically the Black-white divide. And
so they're aware of everything that's going on. Based on the world.
Yeah, like unprompted, they were bringing this up and submitting like drawings and videos when we just asked like, what are you worried about? Like, what are you concerned about? Or what are your wishes for the world? And things like consistent themes that came up is like, I want everyone of like all different, colors to be nice to each other, or I'm worried about how Black people are treated. And so like those things came out really explicitly from their responses. So I would say these things, your child may already be aware of racism. Maybe they're using different words to describe it. They might not know the word racism, but they can see unfairness. They can see how people are mistreated.
I love that. I love that, Courtney, because it shows that, you're not making it up out of thin air. It's supported by research that children are aware of what's going on and how it impacts people, how it impacts their lives, their feelings, and they know a sense of right from wrong.
Yeah. And it's just they need the space and the guidance from a grown-up to help them talk through some of that.
Guidance. Yes, because imagine having all of that. Things are coming at you, you're feeling it, you're receiving it, but you can't process it. That's why it's so important to talk to. That's what I'm getting from you, is that's why it's so important to talk to our children, even those as young as 6, about race.
Yes. Even younger, you can certainly in preschool start talking to your child about race, stemming from their own racial, ethnic, or cultural identity, or your family's cultural identity. There's so much that you can unpack there, and then you build it up into talking about racism and injustice in bigger, more nuanced terms.
And I read to my boys this book called Chocolate Me, I think is the title of it. And my son, he runs around and he's like, Mommy, I'm chocolate. It's the funniest thing ever. But it's starting that at a young age to build a positive association with the way he views himself.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Starting at teaching self-worth and self-love, even when they're not even aware of what those terms mean. But like you said, encouraging them to love themselves, that's even the start of talking about race, right?
Yeah. And saying like it's okay, he's noticing his skin and his skin color, and his skin color is brown, like something he loves, like chocolate.
Yes.
And it's actually not bad to identify your skin color. It's bad when that's attached to racist thoughts and opinions. But you can actually take something like that, something he's noticing, like his skin color, and say like, yeah, it's great, isn't it? Remove the stigma from talking about these things.
And then you could relate that to something else, like, yes, you're chocolate and she's vanilla and he's caramel, and all together you make a beautiful sundae. My mom brain never turns off.
No, you got it. Going straight for dessert. Love it.
Yes. Oh my goodness, Courtney, I'm so thankful that you're using your skills, as the director for research, to kind of just remind us that it's supported, that the need to talk about racism is there. Well, thank you. So, Courtney, what advice would you give to the parent who is super nervous to talk to their child?
Well, first, that nervousness totally makes sense. It's valid. It's scary to dive into a big topic like this. And it's scary to try to figure out how to make sure you're sort of leveling it down appropriately based on your child's age and your child's personal experience. So acknowledge that, and like take some, I hope you can find some courage in that, and knowing that a lot of other people are in the same boat. Take inventory of how you yourself are feeling, including the nervousness. Sometimes there might be a lot of pain if you're a person who identifies as BIPOC. You've wrestled with racism for a while, so this conversation might bring up a lot more in you as an adult. And it's okay to not have all the answers. So, kids are just absorbing so much information that it's helpful to have an outlet for them to just tell you what they saw or what they heard, how it made them feel. And so it's just great to have a space to listen, to ask more probing questions, to find out what's beneath the surface on your child's of your child's mind, in terms of what they've seen and how they're processing it. You know, keep asking questions, and then if they ask you questions, it's okay to say, I don't know, but that's a good question.
Important.
Yeah, and
Because
it's
we don't
something that
always have the answers.
right. And you can go and, Google it and see if you can find a better answer. And if you can't, that's still okay, because it's just normalizing, I think, the conversation and having a space where it's okay to talk about what they've seen and heard and how it makes them feel.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And I think it's so important, whether or not they're children of color or if they're Caucasian children, it's still important to say it, to talk about it, and to empower them, to let them know that they can make a difference as well. Because what did Whitney Houston say? The children are our future.
Well, and let them lead the way.
Thank you so much, Courtney, for your wonderful insight. And thank you so much. And for everyone watching, thank you for taking the opportunity to listen to this message. And I know it could be scary, but the research conducted by Courtney and her team shows us that this is something that is on the mind of even the youngest children. So this is something that we should address and help them navigate it and understand it as much as possible. So let's continue to elevate and grow together. And don't forget to like, comment, let us know your thoughts about talking about race and identity to your children. We would love to hear about it in the comments, and share. Until next time,